I'm the only one on the leaderboard who dared to taunt the coldest team captain in the league with the voice of a girl who doesn't exist. Every night I put on that mask of sound, and a man who once swore he hated weakness slowly opened up, slowly fell for a Ningxi who only lived in his imagination. But I never expected the person I was deceiving every night would be the one I'd have to face directly on stage, and once he found out the truth, it wouldn't just be my heart that fell apart. My whole career and the entire season would collapse with it. The scrimmage ended in suffocating silence. I got up from my seat, my hands still shaking. My coach called me into his office, his face cold. On the screen was a photo of me and my ex-boyfriend, intimate, already spreading across the fan base. The team doesn't need a player tangled in scandal. He said flatly. I didn't argue. I picked up my bag and walked out of the training center, the hallway lights cold above me. The door slammed shut behind me. 3 years gone in under 5 minutes. A week later I signed with a new team, lower ranked, less known. The manager looked over my file and didn't ask why I'd left my old one. Change your player ID, start over. I nodded. My new name, Yuze, no trace of the past left. The new dorm room was small and damp, but at least no one looked at me like they were waiting for the next scandal. I sat on the bed, opened my laptop, and looked at the new season's rankings. My old name was gone from the list. Fine. I'd climb back up from 0. I couldn't sleep that night. A week of pressure sat heavy on my chest. I opened an anonymous streaming account and installed a voice changer app I just bought. The voice that came through the speaker was bright, girlish, completely foreign to me. I named the channel Ningxi. No purpose, no plan, just somewhere to vent without anyone recognizing me. I entered a ranked queue, fingers trembling slightly on the keyboard. The room lights were off, only the screen glowing on my face. This is just a one-time distraction, I told myself. The match started. The enemy jungler was brutal, invading my lane over and over. I opened my mic, Ningxi's voice sweet and sharp. You play jungle like you're robbing someone's house. The other player paused for a second, then let out a mocking laugh. Deep voice, cold, a little arrogant. If you can't handle it, don't queue ranked. I glanced at his ID, Muhan. I shot back without missing a beat. Let's see who really can't handle it. We won, barely. He muted his mic without another word. I laughed to myself in the dark, feeling strangely alive. 2 days later, a message hit the Ningxi channel. Ranked duel, right now, if you dare. It was Muhan. I raised an eyebrow and typed back. Scared of what? The duel was tense, every skill landing by inches. I won barely, but I won. He went quiet for a long moment before dropping a short line. Next time. Then he left the lobby. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the empty screen, the corner of my mouth curling up. Something about that cold, stubborn voice made me happier than any ranked match I'd played in weeks. A clip from the match, screen recorded by some viewer, ended up on an Esports forum. The headline read, "Anonymous female streamer destroys ice gold Captain Muhan." Overnight, Ningxi's views spiked. The comments overflowed with curiosity about her real identity. I closed my laptop, heart racing. This wasn't just a private outlet anymore. I felt excited and unsettled at once. Excited because for the first time in weeks I felt alive. Unsettled because I knew that if this ever got traced back to me, the fallout would be far worse than a rumor. At the team meeting the next morning, my coach slapped a stack of printed comments on the table. "Was that you?" He pointed to a line comparing the voice to an old video of mine. I shook my head, keeping my face as calm as I could. Not me. He studied me for a few seconds, then sighed and warned the whole team to keep a clean image before the season started. I bowed my head, hands clenched under the table. The lie came out so smoothly it chilled even me. But I couldn't stop. Ningxi was the only place left where I could be myself. Muhan started a small group chat with a few close teammates, determined to track down Ningxi's real identity. I found out through an anonymous leak in the fan community. My hands went cold reading it. That night I streamed as usual, keeping my voice as natural as possible. Muhan showed up in the lobby, said nothing, just quietly picked a champion to lane against me. The match was tense as a drawn wire. At the end, he typed one line. "I'm going to find out who you are." I stared at those words for a long time, not sure if I felt afraid or thrilled. A few days later, in a heated official match, I blurted out the exact catchphrase Ningxi used to taunt opponents. It slipped through the team mic and out onto the live broadcast. I froze for half a second, then covered it with a different joke. No one noticed, except one person. Across the arena, Muhan sat up straighter, his eyes sharpening. He said nothing, just quietly noted the timestamp on his phone. A small piece had just clicked into place in his head. After the match, Muhan happened to pass me in the arena hallway. He stopped, looked me over like he was comparing something in his mind. I tensed, kept my face neutral, nodded a polite greeting, and tried to walk past. Wait. His voice came from behind me, low and slow. I turned, my heart hammering. But Muhan just gave a faint smirk and shook his head as if dismissing his own thought. Never mind, you just looked familiar. He walked off. I stood there alone, letting out a long breath of false relief. That night I streamed as usual, trying harder than ever to seem normal. Muhan joined the lobby earlier than usual, watching me pick my champion in silence instead of opening his mic to provoke me like before. I sensed the shift in how he played, more cautious, more observant than aggressive. At the end of the match he said only, "You played differently today." I laughed it off, said it was just a mood. But inside, I knew the line between Ningxi and my real self was getting thinner with every match. Monday morning, the group stage draw for the official season was announced. The whole team crowded around the big screen, chatter filling the room. I pushed in to look, and my heart skipped. My team and Muhan's landed in the same group, a direct matchup right in the opening round. My teammates clapped my shoulder, already hyped to plan strategy against a strong opponent. I nodded on reflex, my eyes locked on Muhan's name on the screen. From today, the line between the official stage and my anonymous knights would no longer stay far apart. The first official match between our teams took place in a packed arena. I sat down, hands ice cold. A few seats away, Muhan sat straight-backed, staring at his screen, expressionless. The match was tense from the first minute, every fight decided by inches. Muhan and I went head-to-head in mid-lane, trading skill combos back and forth. Near the end, my team pulled off a stunning comeback and won by a hair. The crowd roared. I stood to shake hands as protocol demanded. His grip lingered a second longer than it should have, his eyes staying on my face a little too long. After the match, I passed the interview area and ran into Muhan standing alone near the backstage door. He looked at me, not the usual cold stare from the stage, but something more curious. "Not bad out there." A short compliment, his voice still low, but missing its usual edge. I nodded a thanks and turned to walk past, but he asked, "Do you ever play ranked at night?" I froze for half a second, feeling suddenly scrutinized. "Sometimes." I answered quickly and left before the conversation could go further. I could still feel his eyes on my back. That night I logged onto the Ningxi channel, trying to shake off the day's unease. Muhan joined the lobby, his voice heavier than usual. "My team lost today." I played dumb, offering gentle sympathy like a stranger comforting him. "The captain pressure must be rough, huh?" He was quiet for a moment before he started talking about sleepless nights over strategy, about the weight of fans' expectations. His voice grew softer, more honest than anything I'd ever heard from him on stage. I listened in silence, my chest tightening at the thought that I was exploiting my own rival's vulnerability. The conversation stretched until nearly dawn. Muhan talked about pressure from management, about the fear that one day his form would slip and he'd be replaced. I answered with the most sincere comfort I could offer, no longer playing the teasing Ningxi from before. "You're doing great." I said softly, a few seconds of silence on the other end. "Thanks for listening." His voice sounded lighter. I hung up and stared at the dark ceiling, my thoughts tangled. The line between the original joke and something realer was fading, and I wasn't sure I still wanted to hold it. The next morning at practice, I watched Muhan directing his team from a distance, all business, nothing like the soft voice from the night before. My chest tightened. The man who just trusted Ningxi with his heart was the same rival I had to defeat on stage. I gripped my water bottle, guilt creeping in clearly for the first time. A teammate nudged me, asking why I looked so distracted. I shook my head and laughed it off. but in my mind the question kept repeating. I was playing a far more dangerous game than I'd realized. That night, Muhan sent Ningxi a virtual gift in-game, a rare, limited skin I'd once mentioned wanting. Along with it, a short message. Consider it a thank you for listening. I stared at the screen, my heart beating faster than it should. This wasn't playful banter between two anonymous players anymore. I typed back a thank you, my hand trembling slightly. Muhan replied almost instantly with a rare smiley. I closed the app and sat in the dark. Something warm was settling into my chest, and it made me both happy and afraid at the same time. A few days later, a roommate caught me smiling at my phone alone at midnight. "You in love or something? You've been weird lately," he teased, tossing a pillow at me. I laughed it off, denied it, and quickly turned off my screen. But the question echoed in my head all night. Did I actually like Muhan? The thought kept me tossing and turning, staring out the dark window. Everything was going further than I'd planned. An anonymous distraction had touched something I didn't dare name. The next night, mid-conversation, Muhan suddenly asked, "Do you have someone you like?" I froze, my fingers stalling on the keyboard. The simple question sent my heart racing. "No," I answered, Ningxi's voice trembling slightly despite my effort to stay calm. "Why do you ask?" Muhan was silent for a few seconds before answering, his tone unusually serious. "Just wanted to know." The conversation shifted quickly after that, but the echo of the question lingered long after I hung up. I lay staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was stepping into something I couldn't control anymore. On fan forums, people started shipping Ningxi and Muhan after a clip of his warm voice from a match went viral. Shipping hashtags popped up everywhere, along with edited fan art. I scrolled through, panic rising. If this kept spreading, sooner or later my real identity would be dragged into the light. I closed the app, hands trembling. But even through the fear, part of me felt a strange warmth knowing Muhan hadn't denied the rumors in public. I decided to delete the Ningxi channel to end the risk for good. My finger hovered over the delete button but didn't press down. Muhan's warm voice from the night before surfaced in my mind, along with his hesitant question, "Do you have someone you like?" I sighed and pulled my hand back. I knew I should stop before things went too far, but the selfish part of me couldn't let go of the feeling of being truly heard for once. I shut down my laptop, telling myself I'd just be more careful instead of quitting entirely. A few days later, Muhan asked for Ningxi's real phone number, his voice unusually hesitant. "I'd like an easier way to reach you, not just through the game." I gripped my phone, scrambling for a graceful way to refuse. "I don't usually give my number to strangers," I answered, keeping my tone light. Muhan was quiet for a moment, then said something that made my heart skip. "All right, I'll wait until you're ready." His patience left me both moved and guiltier than ever. I hung up and sat staring at the dark screen for a long time. During an internal scrimmage, I unconsciously used the exact tactical instinct Ningxi had discussed with Muhan the night before. Watching from the stands, Muhan narrowed his eyes, his gaze sharper than usual. After the match, he came to find me, his voice slow and pointed. "You seem to understand my team's strategy really well lately." I tensed, keeping my face calm. "Must just be a coincidence." He looked at me for a few more seconds without saying anything else, but that look sent a chill down my spine. I knew the gap between my secret and the truth was closing fast. That night, instead of streaming as usual, Muhan quietly called a friend who worked in audio engineering, asking him to analyze a recording of Ningxi's voice he'd saved. "Just curious," he said, though his tone was unusually serious. His friend promised results within a few days. Muhan hung up and stared out the dark window, my face from the hallway the day before surfacing in his mind. A vague but growing certainty was forming inside him, and this time he was determined to find the truth once and for all. 3 days later, the audio engineer sent Muhan the analysis. The file noted an anomaly in the high-frequency range, a strong likelihood the voice had been digitally altered. Muhan sat quietly in front of the screen, tapping the desk. Not absolute proof, but enough to reinforce a suspicion that had been simmering for weeks. He closed the file without telling anyone, not even his closest teammates. If this suspicion was true, he wanted to confirm it himself before doing anything else. That night, he didn't stream, just quietly kept watch from a distance. Muhan began paying closer attention to every small detail. He pulled up old clips, comparing my official match times against Ningxi's stream schedule. They overlapped in strange, consistent ways. He noted it all down in a private notebook, underlining every coincidence. He told no one, made no rash moves. My face from the hallway kept replaying in his mind. He told himself he'd watch a little longer before confronting me directly if his guess was right. He didn't want to ruin everything with a hasty question. The next match between our teams was tense from the very first minute. In the middle of a chaotic team fight, I shouted through the team mic without thinking, the exact catchphrase Ningxi used to taunt opponents. The arena flinched for a second at the odd line cutting through a serious match. I realized my mistake immediately, heart pounding, and forced myself back into focus. But it was too late. Across the stage, I saw Muhan look straight at me, his hand pausing on the mouse for one exact moment. That lapse in focus nearly cost Muhan a fatal opening as my team's jungler closed in. His teammates shouted a warning through the mic, pulling him back just in time. The match continued, but his rhythm had changed, more cautious, occasionally glancing my way between fights. I felt that gaze even without looking back. Cold sweat ran down my back. We won in the end, but I felt no relief at all. I knew I'd just left a crack that couldn't be taken back. After the match, both teams lined up to shake hands as protocol required. When it was my turn with Muhan, his grip lingered longer than it should have. He looked straight into my eyes, his stare sharper than his usual coldness. That line earlier. He said quietly, just loud enough for only me to hear, sounded familiar. I tensed, forcing a polite smile. Must be a coincidence. I pulled my hand back and walked away faster than necessary. I could feel his eyes still following me, unmoving. That night, Muhan asked for a video call with Ningxi for the first time, his text sounding casual. I stood in front of the mirror, heart pounding, knowing full well this was a trap. I answered the call but immediately claimed my camera was broken, letting only my voice come through the speaker. Muhan paused, then asked, a hint of disappointment in his tone. "Camera's broken again." I laughed it off through the voice changer, deflecting with a random joke. The call ended sooner than usual. I slid down onto the floor, back against the bed, breathing hard, as if I'd just run from something enormous. In the days that followed, Muhan started slipping seemingly casual questions into our conversations. Do you like playing mid lane? Where did you go to school? Each question aimed carefully at details only I would know. I answered cautiously, trying to keep a safe distance, feeling like I was walking a tightrope over a cliff. A few times I nearly gave too much detail, forced to redirect the conversation just in time. Muhan never seemed impatient, patiently probing inch by inch, like a hunter waiting for the perfect moment to strike. During a conversation about strategy, I got carried away breaking down a complex combo that only a high-level professional player would understand in that much detail. The moment I finished, I realized my slip. Ningxi was supposed to be just an ordinary viewer, not someone with that level of expertise. I scrambled to cover, claiming I watched a lot of pro analysis videos online. There was an unusually long pause on the other end. "You really do watch a lot of videos," Muhan finally said, his tone flat and unreadable. I couldn't tell if he believed me or was only pretending to. Muhan's silence stretched through the rest of the call that night. His voice turned cold, his answers short, missing their usual warmth. I tried to lighten the mood but couldn't manage it. Eventually, he made an excuse about something urgent and hung up earlier than usual. I sat staring at the dark screen, my chest heavy. Something had changed, and I wasn't sure I still had the skill to keep this secret much longer. The unease clung to me all night, impossible to shake. Muhan didn't text that night like he usually did. I checked my phone constantly, restless. Every passing minute made me more certain he suspected something serious. I tossed on my bed, my mind spiraling through worst-case scenarios, exposed publicly, dropped by my new team, my career collapsing a second time. I hugged my pillow, staring at the dark ceiling until I finally drifted off near dawn, my sleep haunted by dreams of Muhan's sharp gaze fixed on me. The next morning, a message from Muhan appeared on my screen and my heart dropped. "I think you should be more careful." No explanation, no emoji, none of his usual teasing. I read the line over and over, trying to find the meaning underneath. Was it a warning? Or a sign he already knew everything? I typed a reply, deleted it, typed again, unsure how to respond. In the end, I sent only a short line back. "I will be." The conversation ended there, leaving me with a string of unanswered questions. I couldn't focus on anything for the rest of the day. My teammates asked what was wrong when they noticed my practice slipping, and I blamed it on exhaustion. Muhan's words kept repeating in my head, along with the vision of being exposed in front of the entire esports community. I imagined my coach calling me into his office again, my new team turning their backs just like the last one had. The fear grew heavier with every passing hour. By night, I couldn't even bring myself to open the Ningxi channel, just sitting there staring at the dark screen, unable to face anything. As for Muhan, after sending that warning, he sat alone in the dark for a long time, his phone on the desk. He was nearly certain of the truth now, but chose not to expose it right away. Partly because he wanted absolute certainty, partly because of something else he couldn't quite name yet. He didn't want to hurt someone who'd listened to him so sincerely through all those long nights. He decided to keep watching, wait for the right moment, instead of confronting me rashly and risking everything he'd already built. The league entered its offline training phase ahead of the qualifiers. Organizers housed all the teams at the same hotel for convenience. I wheeled my suitcase into the lobby and ran straight into Muhan at the elevator. We both froze for a second. What a coincidence. He said, his tone calm but his eyes lingering on my face a beat too long. I nodded a polite greeting and stepped into the elevator with him in suffocating silence. The doors closed, and the tight space made me acutely aware of just how close we were in every sense. That evening, running into each other at the hotel's dining area, Muhan pulled out the chair across from me without being asked. His manner was nothing like on stage, no longer cold and distant, but open, almost awkward as he made conversation. "Eating alone is boring. Mind if I join?" I nodded, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. We talked about nothing in particular, hotel food, the packed training schedule, but his eyes kept drifting to me in a way I couldn't ignore. The more we talked, the more I noticed how strangely familiar his mannerisms were, the way he tilted his head when listening, the way he paused at just the right beat before answering a joke, exactly like he did every night talking to Ningxi. I was rattled, trying not to let the surprise show on my face. Was it just coincidence, or was he doing this on purpose in front of me? I gripped my chopsticks tighter, keeping my eyes down on my bowl, not daring to look at him for too long. Midway through the meal, Muhan dropped a line like it was nothing. "I once told a friend about being scared of dogs as a kid. You wouldn't know that story, right?" My chopsticks froze in midair. That was exactly the story Ningxi had heard from him late one night, a story he'd never told anyone else. My heart pounded, but I forced my face to stay neutral. "Why are you telling me that?" I asked, trying to deflect. He just smiled faintly, not answering directly, his eyes locked on my reaction as if waiting for something. I could feel my hand trembling slightly as I picked up my water glass. Trying to stay calm, I quickly steered the conversation toward upcoming strategy, hoping he wouldn't push further. He was quiet for a few seconds, his eyes still on me, then finally went along with it, starting to discuss our qualifier opponents. But for the rest of the meal, I couldn't relax. Every word out of his mouth made me flinch, afraid I might slip up again under that watchful gaze. At the end of the meal, Muhan stood, giving me a faint, unreadable smile. "Thanks for eating with me," he said, his tone unusually gentle, not pressing for anything further like I'd feared. But that very gentleness, that silence, unsettled me more than any direct question could have. I watched his back disappear around the hallway corner, my mind in chaos. It felt like he already knew everything and was just choosing the right moment to say it. I went back to my room and sat frozen for a long time before I could calm down. Later that evening, Muhan texted me to meet on the hotel's rooftop terrace, claiming he wanted to discuss qualifier strategy further. I hesitated a long time before deciding to go, a vague sense telling me this wouldn't just be a conversation about the game. A cold night breeze hit me as I stepped out and found him already leaning against the railing, looking down at the city lights below. He turned to look at me, his expression unreadable in the dark. "Thanks for coming," he said quietly, his tone no longer as casual as it had been that afternoon. Muhan was quiet for a long moment, looking out into the distance before turning to ask directly, his voice slow but firm. "If I said I liked Ningxi, what would you think?" The question dropped into the silence like a bomb. I stood frozen, my heart pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. This wasn't some idle question anymore. It carried the weight of something he'd already quietly decided long ago. I tried to speak, but no words came out, just standing there trembling under his scrutinizing gaze. I don't know what to say. I finally managed to get the words out, my voice cracking. That was the only truth I had right then. I genuinely didn't know how to answer a question carrying that much risk. Muhan looked at me, a flicker of disappointment crossing his face, but no anger. "It's all right," he said, his tone softening. "You don't need to answer right now." That unexpected patience left my heart even more tangled. I couldn't tell if I was facing an elaborate trap or a sincerity I didn't deserve. Muhan took a step closer, the distance between us shrinking. He reached out and gently took my hand, his eyes steady on mine without flinching. The warmth from his hand made me shiver in a way completely different from the fear before. "Whoever you are," he said softly, almost a whisper, "I still want to know you better." My heart tightened, moved, and panicked all at once. Those words sounded like an opening, or maybe a declaration that he'd already known everything for a long time. I panicked, pulling my hand back, stepping away, my heart racing so hard I could barely breathe. I'm tired, I'm going back to my room," I stammered, not daring to look at him for another second. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked fast toward the elevator, nearly running. Behind me, I heard no call to stop, only heavy silence hanging over the terrace. Back in my room, I slammed the door shut and leaned against it, gasping. My heart still hadn't stopped racing, and I couldn't tell if it was fear or some other feeling I wasn't ready to name. Muhan stayed alone on the terrace, watching my back disappear behind the elevator door. The night wind stirred his jacket, but he made no move to leave. My panicked reaction, strangely enough, only strengthened his certainty further. No one reacted that violently to an idle question unless something was truly being hidden. He gave a faint smile to himself in the dark, his eyes holding both tenderness and resolve. "Almost there," he murmured to himself, "just a little more." A few days later, a press conference clip spread across social media. A female player on Muhan's team publicly confessed her feelings for him in front of the cameras, holding a bouquet with trembling hands. The whole room buzzed, cameras flashing non-stop. I watched the clip on my phone, my fingers unconsciously tightening around the case. I have no right to be jealous, I reminded myself, but the discomfort rose in my chest anyway, quiet and hard to name. I read the articles over and over, my thoughts a mess. My roommate turned on the news, chattering excitedly about the perfect couple according to the internet. I stayed silent, pretending to focus on my own phone to avoid weighing in. Every paired-up photo made my chest tighten further. I wondered what exactly I was overreacting to, the fear of being exposed, or simply not wanting to see Muhan standing next to someone else, even just in the news. At the next press conference, Muhan turned down the confession bluntly, no room left for speculation. "I'm focused on competing," a short answer that closed the door completely. But the media didn't let go, continuing to blow the story up, pairing our photos into headline after headline across Esports forums. I read through the arguing comments, still unable to settle even knowing Muhan had refused publicly and firmly. That night I logged onto the Ningxi channel as usual, but my voice through the changer couldn't hide an unusual coldness. Muhan noticed from the first greeting, "You seem different today," he observed, his tone gently probing. I tried to answer normally, but my replies came out shorter than usual, missing their usual warmth. The conversation grew stiff, the silences longer than before. I knew I was letting my real feelings show, but I couldn't hide the irritation rising inside me. Muhan noticed the clear shift in my tone, and instead of asking directly, he chose to tease gently to test my reaction. "You jealous about that press conference thing?" he asked, a hint of playfulness in his voice, but still watching closely. I froze, my heart racing at being caught so precisely. "Who's jealous?" I said stiffly, trying to sound indifferent, but my voice came out a notch too high, too obvious. There was a second of silence on the other end, then Muhan let out a soft laugh, warm and clearly pleased. "Then why does your voice sound so tense?" Muhan pressed on, his tone still gentle but relentless. I fumbled, trying to find a clever answer, but my real feelings had already taken over my judgment. Because she doesn't deserve you. The words slipped out before I could stop them, jealousy laid bare. I froze the moment I said it, realizing I'd just shown my real feelings far too clearly, far too dangerously. A long, heavy silence followed on the other end. Muhan didn't say anything about the slip, but I could hear the smile in his voice when he spoke again. "I know now," 3 short words carrying a certainty that made my heart skip. Not, "I know you're jealous." In the ordinary sense, something deeper, as if he'd just found the final piece to a puzzle he'd quietly been assembling for weeks. I didn't dare ask, quickly changing the subject, but the unease clung to me all night. In the days that followed, I deliberately kept my distance from Muhan in person, avoiding unnecessary encounters around the training camp. I was afraid that if I faced him directly, all my pent-up feelings would spill out in ways I couldn't control. Muhan seemed to notice the avoidance but never chased it, only watching quietly from a distance whenever we crossed paths in the hallway or the shared dining area. His patient silence left me even more unsettled, unsure whether to feel relieved or anxious. Amid the growing tension, a familiar figure suddenly appeared outside the training center gate, my ex-boyfriend, the same one whose leaked photo had gotten me kicked off my old team. He blocked my path, his eyes calculating. "Long time no see," he said, dripping with mockery. "Heard you've been living pretty comfortably lately. Wonder how long that'll last." I tensed, the past I'd thought buried rushing back, threatening to tear apart everything I'd tried to rebuild. He kept up the threats, hinting he'd leak even more old evidence if I didn't cooperate with his demands. I stood frozen, my hands clenched white, unable to tell anyone on my new team what was happening. If management found out about another scandal, getting dropped a second time was almost certain. I tried to negotiate, asking for more time, but his eyes only showed contempt, and I knew he had no intention of letting this go easily. By chance, right in the middle of the confrontation, Muhan happened to walk by and witnessed the whole scene from a distance. He stopped, watching my rare display of panic and the man's blatant intimidation. Muhan's face darkened, his eyes flashing with a cold anger I'd never seen before. He didn't rush over immediately, just stood watching for a few more seconds, as if weighing the situation before deciding how to step in. Muhan walked over and stood directly between me and the man, his tall frame forming a solid wall. "What's going on here?" His voice was low and chilling, nothing like the gentleness I heard every night. The man faltered, visibly shrinking under the commanding presence of a professional team captain. "Not your business." He tried to hold his ground, but Muhan just gave a cold smirk and fired back a threat of his own with such force that the man backed off and stormed away, seething. The man left, but he wasn't done. That night he texted me, his tone more venomous than before. "Think having someone backing you up means you're safe? I'll leak every old photo online, see if you'll have any face left to stand on that stage." Attached was a blurry screenshot, just clear enough for me to recognize the old sensitive photos I'd thought were long deleted. My hands shook holding the phone, cold sweat running down my back. I sank to the floor, arms around my knees, not knowing what to do next. Tell the coaches? No, they'd drop me immediately, just as they'd warned. Tell my teammates? I couldn't bring myself to look them in the eye and confess. I sat like that for hours, my phone lighting up and dying over and over with a stream of threatening messages. A crushing loneliness and helplessness settled over me, heavier than anything I'd felt since being cut from my old team. The next morning, Muhan immediately noticed my exhaustion at practice. "Something wrong?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice rather than his usual scrutiny. I shook my head, forcing a weak smile. "It's nothing, just didn't sleep well." Muhan studied me for a few more seconds, clearly not buying the explanation, but he didn't push. He just quietly watched me from a distance for the rest of practice, worry plain on his face. That night, in a wave of panic, I unconsciously opened the Ningxi channel and sent Muhan a short, desperate message. "I'm scared, I don't know what to do." I sent it before realizing, with a jolt, that I just revealed a fatal coincidence, the same night, the same panic, mirroring my real self exactly. But it was too late to take back. Muhan replied almost instantly, his voice urgent and worried. "What happened? Tell me." Muhan read the message, and in his mind, every last piece clicked into place. The same night, the exact same panic I'd shown in person that morning. This was no longer suspicion, he was almost completely certain now. But instead of exposing it right away, he chose to comfort Ningxi first, his tone gentle and steady. "Whatever happens, I'll help you, tell me, don't be afraid to face this alone." That steadiness made me break down crying in silence. Right after, Muhan quietly began investigating the man threatening me, using his connections in the esports world to trace his real identity. He discovered the man was a former player with a past extortion scandal, one that had been buried before due to lack of evidence. Muhan quietly gathered more information, preparing a careful countermove, determined to shut down the threat before it spiraled out of control. But the man moved faster than expected. The next morning, part of my sensitive photos surfaced on an anonymous forum, captioned to hint at Yu's old scandal, the same one that had ended my career under my previous name. The news spread like wildfire, flooding social media within hours. My phone buzzed nonstop, a flood of malicious comments and messages from strangers pouring in. I sat frozen in front of the screen, feeling like the whole world was collapsing in front of me. My team's management called an emergency meeting that same morning, every face heavy with tension. My coach looked at me, his voice sterner than ever. "I warned you already. The team can't handle another scandal, not right before the qualifiers." He dropped a contract on the table, hinting at early termination. I bowed my head, nothing left to say in my defense, feeling history repeat itself exactly as I'd always feared since leaving my old team. That night, in desperation, I decided I'd confess everything to the press the next day, admit it all, accept every consequence as long as it kept my new team from being dragged further into the scandal because of me. I drafted a short statement on my phone, my hands shaking with every word. This could be the end of my career, but at least I'd stop living in fear of exposure at any moment. I set the phone down and stared out the window, feeling strangely empty. The next morning, right at the pre-qualifier press conference, as reporters started aiming sharp questions about my scandal, Muhan suddenly stepped forward, standing right beside me in front of the cameras. The whole room fell silent at the unexpected move. Before any more questions, he said, his voice clear and firm, "I'd like to say a few words." I stood frozen beside him, not understanding what was happening, my heart pounding in my chest. "Those leaked photos don't define who Yuze is," Muhan said firmly to the cameras, his eyes steady, unflinching. "If you want to place blame, I'm willing to take shared responsibility with him." The whole press room gasped, murmurs breaking out everywhere. I turned to look at him, unable to believe what I'd just heard. This wasn't what I'd expected, wasn't even something I'd dared to hope for, but he'd done it, right in front of the entire press. The press conference clip spread rapidly across social media. The internet split into two clear camps, one side harshly critical, calling it a cheap PR stunt, the other deeply moved by the public, courageous protection from a captain known for being cold and closed off. Debates erupted across every esports forum, our names trending within hours. I skimmed a few comments, my hands still shaking from what I'd just witnessed. After the press conference, Muhan pulled me into a private room and shut the door. The sudden quiet after the media storm left my ears ringing. He turned and looked straight into my eyes, his voice soft but certain in every word. "I've known you were Ningxi for a long time now." The world around me seemed to stop in that moment. Every lie, every layer of disguise I'd built for months collapsed completely in one short sentence. I stood frozen, every excuse in my head suddenly meaningless. Nowhere left to hide, no disguise left to cling to. Since when?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Muhan looked at me, no trace of the blame I'd feared, only a strange gentleness mixed with relief. "It doesn't matter since when," he said softly. "What matters is that right now, you don't have to hide anything from me anymore." Muhan recounted the whole process of how he'd discovered the truth, from the voice analysis, to the coincidences he'd quietly logged for weeks, to the night I'd texted him in a panic that matched my real-life breakdown exactly. "I've been certain for a while," he said. "But I chose to stay quiet because I didn't want to force you to say it before you were ready." I listened to every word, my heart aching and moved all at once, never imagining he'd quietly protected that silence for me for so long. My tears broke free without warning, impossible to hold back any longer. All the pressure, fear, and guilt pent up for months came pouring out at once. "I'm sorry," I said between sobs. "I lied to you from the very start. I shouldn't have." Muan stepped closer, not letting me finish, gently wiping the tears from my cheek. "You don't need to apologize for being yourself the only way you could back then." His voice was soft but enough to soothe every wound inside me. Muhan pulled me into his arms, holding me tight as if afraid I'd run again. "I've never once regretted knowing the truth," he whispered against my ear, his breath warm. "I only regret not saying it sooner so you wouldn't have had to carry it alone for so long." I leaned my head against his shoulder, my tears still falling but my heart lighter than it had been in a long time. For the first time in months, I felt like I no longer had to carry a heavy secret alone. But that brief happiness didn't last. Just 2 days later, both teams' management called a joint emergency meeting, announcing a strict ban on any romantic relationship between the two captains, citing concerns over fair competition between direct rivals. "This is to protect the integrity of the league," the organizer's representative said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Muhan and I sat side by side in the meeting room, our hands gripped tightly together under the table, neither of us daring to object out loud. Right after the meeting, Muhan's team's main sponsor sent a warning, threatening to pull all funding if rumors of the two captains' relationship kept spreading and damaged the brand's image. Muhan read the notice in silence, his jaw tight. This wasn't just his own career anymore, it was tied to the livelihoods of an entire team of people. The pressure showed clearly on his face, even as he tried to hide it from me. That night I sought Muhan out, my mind already made up. "We should break up, temporarily," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could despite the ache inside. "I don't want you to lose everything you've built because of me." It was the only way I could think of to protect his career and future, even knowing it meant giving up the most precious thing I'd had since the humiliating day I'd left my old team. Muhan looked at me for a long moment, then let out a bitter laugh, nothing like joy. "Again?" he asked, his tone starting to sharpen. "You're running away again, exactly like you ran from my question on that terrace that night." I froze, not expecting him to see my decision that way. "This isn't running, this is protecting you." I tried to explain, but my voice already trembled with a mix of anger and hurt. "Protecting me by deciding for me?" Muhan's voice cracked with anger, the first time I'd seen him truly furious since we'd met. "I don't need protection like this." The argument erupted, fierce, neither of us willing to back down, hurtful words flying in the heat of it. I'd never seen Muhan raise his voice like that, and he'd probably never seen me this stubborn either. The air between us was strained to breaking. In the end, I turned and walked out of the room, tears streaming down my face, not daring to look back for even a second, afraid the little resolve I had left would crumble entirely. I buried myself in a punishing training schedule in the days that followed, trying to pour all my focus into the coming finals as a way to escape the pain tearing through me. But no matter how hard I tried, the image of Muhan's hurt expression that night kept surfacing every time I closed my eyes. As for Muhan, he didn't reach out for days, his silence stretching unusually long. His teammates noticed his performance dropping sharply in practice, his usually sharp plays turning slow and unfocused. His coach pressed him repeatedly but got nothing back but familiar cold silence. Rumors of internal conflict began spreading through the scene, though no one knew the real reason behind the sudden decline. The qualifiers ended with a result no one expected. Both teams, despite their unstable form, still fought their way through to the season finals. The final bracket was announced, both team names appearing opposite each other on the big screen amid the crowd's roar. I stood staring at the bracket, my mind a tangle of emotions. In just a few days, Muhan and I would be forced to face each other directly on the biggest stage of the season, with everything between us still unresolved. In the days before the finals, the media kept digging into the rumors surrounding the two captains, article after article speculating about the emotional tension affecting both our performances. Cameras hunted every moment we appeared near each other at press events, searching for any sign to exploit. I avoided Muhan's eyes at every rare encounter, the tension between our teams thickening with every hour as the season's deciding match drew closer. The finals began in the suffocating tension of a packed arena. I sat down at my station, hands trembling slightly on the keyboard, unable to fully focus on the match. My plays kept coming out imprecise, mistakes I never normally made. The commentators on the live broadcast couldn't hide their surprise at my uncharacteristically shaky form. My team fell behind, the pressure on my shoulders growing heavier by the minute. Across the stage, Muhan noticed the instability in my play immediately. Even while winning, his eyes never left the visible tension on my face through the close-up camera feed. He recognized that I was forcing myself through it alone, exactly the way I'd always done since our fight. His chest tightened with concern, every trace of leftover anger dissolving completely, replaced only by genuine worry for me. In the middle of a critical team fight, as my team fell into danger against a brutal gank from Muhan's side, he made a decision that stunned the entire arena, deliberately pulling back, giving up the kill to shield me from the fatal attack. His teammates shouted furious objections through the mic, unable to understand why their captain would throw away a golden opportunity in the most important match of the season. But Muhan held firm, his eyes steady on the screen. The arena fell quiet for a moment at the baffling move, the commentators visibly thrown off too. "That's a strange tactical call from Captain Muhan," one of them said on air. Social media exploded with debate instantly, flooding with questions over why rivals would save each other in the most decisive match of the season. I sat frozen in front of my screen, immediately understanding exactly who that move had been for, my heart pounding with emotion. Right after that play, one of Muhan's teammates, unable to contain his frustration, shouted through the team mic on live broadcast, accusing him of letting personal feelings sabotage the team's strategy. "What are you doing? We're about to lose because of your decision." That sharp voice accidentally bled into the broadcast audio, heard clearly by every viewer watching live. The tension in the arena thickened further, every eye turning to Muhan, waiting for his response. Muhan was silent for a second, then abruptly muted the team channel and switched to the public broadcast in front of the entire live audience. "I'd like to say a few words before we continue." His voice rang out clear and steady, not a single tremor. "I'm not doing this to sabotage our strategy. I'm doing it because I love Yuze and I couldn't stand by and watch him get hurt, even in a match." The whole stadium erupted in a wave of gasps. After that declaration, the entire stadium fell into absolute silence for a few breathless seconds. Tens of thousands of spectators in the stands, millions more watching live online, all fixed on the big screen showing a close-up of Muhan's steady face. Not a single sound rose, not even a whisper in that vast space. I sat frozen in front of my own screen, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might echo through the whole arena. I stood up from my seat, trembling, gripping my own mic tightly. In that moment, I knew I couldn't run anymore, not because I was cornered, but because I refused to let Muhan carry the consequences of that brave declaration alone. I took a deep breath, steadying my racing heart, and walked slowly but surely towards center stage, where the stage lights and hundreds of cameras were waiting. "I'm Ningxi," I said, my voice shaking but not looking away from the cameras. A wave of murmurs rose across the arena instantly. I told the whole story, from the anonymous streams that started as nothing more than a way to vent, to feelings that grew far beyond what I'd ever planned, to the past that had once seen me cast out by this very industry over prejudice. I don't expect everyone to accept this right away. I said, my voice growing steadier, but I don't want to hide anymore. This is who I am, and this is the person I love. Right after the confession, social media split into two clear camps. Some accounts criticized harshly, calling it a stunt for attention right in the middle of the finals. But the majority, especially the younger fans who'd followed us for years, expressed being deeply moved and voiced strong support for the rare sincerity between us. A supportive hashtag quickly climbed to the top of trending, overwhelming the negative voices within just a few hours. The match resumed after that emotional pause, and something strange happened. Instead of crumbling under the weight of public pressure, both teams played with a spirit neither had shown before. My team, fueled by the moment we just lived through, gradually clawed back control, staging an impressive comeback step by step. Sharp, coordinated plays followed one after another. Finally, after one decisive, dramatic fight, my team secured the championship, lifting the trophy amid the arena's thunderous roar. After the awards ceremony, Muhan and I walked out through the backstage doors, hand in hand, with nothing left to hide. Camera flashes went off non-stop, but this time I felt no fear, no urge to run like before. Fans crowded both sides of the walkway, cheers rising without end. Muhan squeezed my hand, glancing over with a soft smile. "From now on, we don't have to hide anything anymore," I nodded, a smile spreading across my face for the first time in what felt like months of storm. Muhan chose to publicly stand up and protect Yuze right in the middle of the most important match of his career, willingly risking his reputation and his team's strategy for the sake of a single confession of love. Some say it was the bravest thing a captain could ever do for the person he loves. Others say he was selfish, letting personal feelings override an entire match and put his teammates' hard work and careers at risk. Between love and responsibility to the team, do you think Muhan made the right choice or the wrong one?